Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport, and good morning to you all. It is Izubee Charles, joined by Stephen Wagner, and today we have a special edition live from San Antonio at the Navy All-American Game. Stephen, you're watching some of the best prospects from the 2025 and 2026 go at it in your home state of Texas. You've been all over there covering guys, Miami commits, Miami targets, and all that great stuff. So we have a packed show talking about all the All-Americans, and a lot of Hurricane team news. But Stephen, let's jump right into it. You got to watch those guys practice a little bit at that first practice. What were your initial thoughts of some of, the Miami commits and the targets that you saw out there in Texas?
Yeah, so I didn't actually have a chance to see any of Miami's signees at the All American Bowl my first day here. So, for those of you who don't know, Hayden Lowe is the only 2025 signee who ended up actually making the trip down to San Antonio. Malachi Tony and Amari Wallace did not make the trip. They will be preparing to move they will be preparing for Miami's move in on Saturday the 11th, which is also the same day as the game. Hayden Lowe will be moving in pretty shortly after that. But I did have a chance to come down here and get a look at a lot of the top 2026 guys. Spent a couple of hours yesterday kind of getting a chance to watch some of these dudes. Tyler Atkinson, I had a chance to see him, the 5-star linebacker, number 1 linebacker in the country. He's a really, really, really impressive athlete who I really like a lot in Miami, is absolutely going to be all over. Elijah Golden is a guy that the Hurricanes are kind of keeping tabs on over at Cardinal Mooney. They'll be keeping eyes on him. Bryce Perry Wright is a guy who had a chance to come down to Miami this fall. Hurricanes made a pretty good impression. Hurricanes have been making a pretty solid effort for him, and they are one of these schools that I think is definitely going to be in the mix. Devin Carter, former Florida State commit, who decommitted a while back. He's here as well, one of the top 2026 receivers. I believe he's a top 45 overall prospect too. A lot of excitement about him. Shoot, man, I feel like I'm forgetting someone here. There are so many kids here. I'm literally forgetting guys. And how could I forget about Jabari Brady, guy right there in Miami's backyard, top 75 prospect, a guy that Miami is continuing to monitor. Maybe he isn't necessarily incredibly high on the Hurricanes board right now, but we are continuing to monitor him as best we can.
Yeah, a lot of interesting names. And one thing that I want to bring up with these, All-American games, a couple years back, it was so focused on the current class. Now it's a bit of a look in the future. And I was at the Under Armour All-American game in Orlando, in late December. And it was kind of the same thing. Obviously you have your 2025 guys, the SJ Alfatulis of the world, Chris Ewald, and all that good stuff. But in those, All-American matchups now, they're bringing in the juniors. They're bringing in more juice to compete in those matchups. And, just want to talk about some guys that I saw during my time there in Orlando, starting off with Jackson Cantwell, number 1 prospect in the 2026 class, a guy that, got on campus in Miami for their game last fall and had a lot of great things to say about them. And another marquee tackle in that 2026 class, Emmanuel Inhiancho. I recently did an Inside the Lines with him and kind of got, a glimpse of his backstory. Pretty interesting basketball player who said, hey, let me try out this football thing. Worked out pretty well for him from March till now. He became a 5-star prospect and the number 3 recruit in the 2026 class. So I know a ton of 2026 guys, and those are going to be the guys that we talk about in the spring and all that stuff. I know we still have the 2025 guys on the back of our mind, but a ton of 2026 guys that we're going to be monitoring over the next few weeks. Stephen, wanted to ask you too, watching those guys, work a little bit. If you had to say one guy stood out the most or one guy took the cake for your top performer, who would it be and why?
Man, that's a good question. I think I'd probably have to go with Tyler Atkinson. for now. Man, he is just so big. He is just so big, so impressive, so quick to diagnose things. Rushes really well, very disciplined in his run lanes. He has a nose for the big play. He always just seems to find himself around the ball. Even though yesterday, it really wasn't a very intense practice, and a lot of what I saw was really kind of more like walk through shells type of stuff. Don't hit the quarterback. And obviously, it's also kind of hard to really judge these guys whenever they're going up against makeshift offensive lines that, have never played together before. And, there's really not a lot of chemistry there. But, just kind of his measurables, his tangibles, I think are really impressive. He moves really well sideline to sideline. Lateral quickness is, really, really impressive. Huge frame. I think he's only going to continue to get bigger too. Great vertical, really strong. I mean, man, it's kind of hard to find flaws in this kid's game. I really freaking love this guy.
Yeah, he's a solid prospect. Had the chance to speak with him a little bit when he visited down there in Miami December. Recruitment's still really wide open. Obviously, a Georgia guy. Georgia's making a push, but hey, Miami's going to put their best foot forward. Tyler Atkinson, who is not only the best linebacker in the country, but one of the best prospects in that 2026 class. And sticking on the topic of 2026 guys, Miami's coaching staff has been on the road the past 2 days, checking in on local guys and guys, throughout the Sunshine State. It's even one guy that checked in on is local Southridge center Ryan Moret, who you had the chance to catch up with. Coach Cristobal, Coach Mirabal pulled up down there in Southridge. Had the chance to speak with them. Kind of what's the latest in that situation, and how meaningful was seeing Coach Cristobal and Coach Mirabal stopping and check on him, according to Ryan.
Very, very meaningful. Ryan's a kid that Miami's keeping pretty close tabs on too. They definitely like him. They're definitely showing some pretty meaningful interest in him. He's remained very, very high on Miami for a while. I mean, really, since the Hurricanes offered, since the Hurricanes offered and started showing interest, I mean, he's completely reciprocated that. He's had a couple of opportunities to get to campus. I think he visited campus either 3 times visited Miami either 3 times or 4 times last year. He went to either 2 or 3 Miami home games. He also had a chance to get to Miami in the spring to actually go watch practice. Hurricanes are keeping a really, really close eye on him, potentially as a center or an interior offensive lineman in the class. They're also making a pretty good push for Grant Wise, who's the son of Ty Wise, who has very, very close ties to Mario Cristobal. He actually played for Mario whenever Mario was a GA at the University of Miami, then went on to be a GA for Mario whenever Mario became the head coach at FIU. So Hurricanes are keeping very close tabs on Moret. He likes Miami one heck of a lot. I think right now, the question is, more going to be about, if this is a guy that Miami wants bad enough that, they would go ahead and accept that commitment from him. Obviously, there's still a long ways to go in the 2025 or in the 2026 cycle, excuse me. And Miami's offensive line big board is still really, really big. So, I think right now we're all just kind of waiting to, sort of separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, and waiting to see Miami really start to narrow that list.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of continue talking about the offensive line board. We had a few, threads on the message board kind of talking about, hey, what do you guys think the priority of the 2026 class? And we both agreed it's got to be that offensive line. Obviously every year Miami kind of prioritizes a group. The 2025 class was a secondary, the 2024 class was defensive line, and 2023, you can say it was the offensive line, but I feel like in the 2026 cycle, offensive line, I think will take that cake, because you look across Miami's offensive line now, obviously you return 4 out of 5 starters with Markel Bell and Inez Cooper, and then you got Matthew McCoy, and then Francis Mainoa, and then you bring in the center transfer from TCU. So all those guys have the potential to leave next year, which would you have to completely start from scratch on that offensive line. Obviously, Miami has some guys in the program that they're excited about, they think can develop, but hey, replacing 5 starters is never easy, and what better way to do it than go getting some of the top offensive linemen in that 2026 class. And when I had the chance to speak with Jackson Cantwell, I said, "Hey, what's your interest levels in Miami? Kind of what's one thing that's drawing you to the Hurricanes?" He said, "Hey, they think I have the ability to come in and start as a day one freshman, similar to what Francis Mauigoa said." And when we spoke to a guy like Emmanuel Hancho, he said he loves the development of Mario Cristobal, of Coach Mirabal, saying, "Hey, it's not too often that you find an offensive line head coach, a guy that's going to be in the trenches with you, actually knowing what he's talking about." So these young 2026 prospects see an opportunity in Miami, and I think Miami's going to chase after these big time tackles. Kenai Pepe, another guy we can't forget out of IMG, a program that Miami's had a lot of success recruiting in since Mario Cristobal got there. So, Steven, just want to get your thoughts on, what position group do you think is that priority? I know you're going to say offensive line, but just your thoughts on, how important it is to land some marquee guys in 2026 class.
Yeah. Right now, I mean, we definitely feel good about Miami's offensive line depth kind of collectively as a unit. But I think this is kind of the year where, you know, the last time that Miami really went really hard after an offensive line group or the offensive line as a group was in Mario Cristobal's first recruiting class, back in 2023. This time next year, those guys, are either going to be very seasoned veterans with, maybe 1 year, 2 years of eligibility left, or, you're going to have a guy like Francis Mauigoa, who's already left and is off to the NFL and is hopefully preparing to be a first round draft pick. So, we're getting to the point where, I mean, Miami just straight up needs more linemen. They are going to need more linemen because everyone else, I mean, is hopefully going to be getting ready to graduate. That I also think that they're probably going to go ahead and place a little bit of emphasis on the defensive line just because Miami needs D tackles. Right now they have the numbers at D tackle. They have a boatload of them, but I mean, the harsh truth, the harsh reality is the defensive tackle position has just not been up to par in recent years. I mean, you can go get a Simeon Barrow at the transfer portal, but collectively as a unit, Miami's defensive line play, I think last year was, kind of subpar. Especially when you look at, the guys they brought in and the guys that they were really hoping were going to be home run hitters. Tyler Barron, I think that a lot of people are kind of disappointed by his total production, especially after the way he opened the year against Florida. Justin Scott, last year he was still a freshman. He was kind of just starting to work his way onto the field. I know Miami's definitely going to be hoping that, he'll be to the point where he can be, a little bit more of a contributor this year. You've got other guys coming in this cycle, like Dante Simpson and Micah Newton, but both of them are pretty raw freshmen who I doubt are going to be ready to contribute right away. There's you had guys like Ahmed Moten, but Miami, I think straight up just needs they need better players at defensive tackle because, like I said, I mean, I don't think that anyone on Miami staff would deny that last year their defensive line just wasn't up to snuff.
Yeah, trenches. We know Mario is a huge trench guy, and he believes in building a program from the inside out, starting with the offense and defensive line and making your way to wide receiver skill positions, secondary, all that good stuff. And, one area that we saw Miami really, really attack, this transfer portal was defensive back, bringing in, I believe 4 guys, cornerbacks, safeties, all that good stuff. And, one guy that kind of remains looming in the balance is a very interesting story that Matt did a great job on is Xavier Lucas, a guy that is from South Florida. Steve and I both had the chance to watch him at American Heritage. Freshman at Wisconsin, had a great freshman year and, decided, hey, I want to test the waters, enter the transfer portal. Obviously submitted the paperwork to do that, but Wisconsin still has not allowed him to enter the transfer portal. Matt caught up with Lucas's attorney who kind of broke down the situation. And Steven, it is a crazy situation that is now going into court. Just want to get your quick thoughts on the whole Xavier Lucas situation. And obviously, if he does enter the portal, what are your thoughts about him as a defensive back?
I don't know what to make of this because honestly, I don't really remember there being a precedent for this. So I off the top of my head, I haven't been able to think of something that I could point to and say, oh, okay, well, this is what typically happens in these situations because usually the way this works is a player says, hey, I want to go to the portal, or a team says, hey, you need to go to the portal. They inform the university of their decision, and then the university, within those 48 hours, goes ahead and submits the paperwork. I honestly had no idea what was going to happen once the 48-hour window expired, because I never really seen anything like this before. I think it was inevitable that attorneys were going to get involved. I mean, I definitely think that he's going to be out of Wisconsin one way or another because, quite frankly, I don't see how you go back to a university after an experience like this. I think we are actively seeing the bridge being burned between Lucas and Wisconsin. I would be absolutely like appalled if he ends up playing at Wisconsin next year. I think more than likely, he'll end up, in the portal. Miami would absolutely be a great fit for him, and he was a prospect that Miami really, really wanted back in the 2024 class, but. He'd been committed to Wisconsin for so long. He felt really good about the Badgers. He had good relationships with pretty much everyone on that staff at the time, and kind of liked the idea of being able to sort of get away from home. Maybe actually get a little bit of distance from home as opposed to staying closer to home. There's a lot of college kids who graduate high school and decide, man, I kind of do want to go out there. I do want to like go far away from home. I do want to do something different, and that's basically what Xavier Lucas did. Now, I do think that it would make complete sense for him to come back to Miami. Really talented defensive back who, we had the chance to watch him. Going up against Jeremiah Smith and JoJo Trader whenever he was at American Heritage. And, damn if he wasn't, really giving those guys, a run for their money. He was full on competing with Jeremiah Smith, as incredible as Smith was. He was going toe to toe with JoJo Trader. They were chirping at each other. I really do think that he absolutely has the ability to come and be one of those impact players at Miami. But the Hurricanes missed on him the first time. We'll see if they can hold on to him the second time.
Yeah, Lucas is a guy that I mentioned a little bit earlier that I was very impressed with. Steven was very impressed with, like he just said. And, you speak with the coaching staff at American Heritage, they say the world about him. Very, very, very athletic, very, very intelligent. And if he ends up leaving Wisconsin, I do think he'd make a great fit for that Hurricanes defense that currently does not have a defensive coordinator. But we do take a close look under the hood to see the personnel on the defense and what there will be when a new defensive coordinator is named. Not too many guys that obviously we know Coach Cristobal likes to keep a tight ship and keeps things under wraps. So, obviously there's names getting swirled around, but we won't know until it actually happens. So we're keeping a close eye on that. But make sure to check out what the defensive coordinator will have when he gets down in Miami. And I think he'll have a good group, obviously, with Miami overall in that secondary and some key guys returning. So make sure to check out that update. We're going to jump back into a little bit of recruiting talk. Also from that Under Armour All-American game, I had the chance to go one-on-one with Miami center signee SJ Alfaituli, who will be on campus in the next few weeks. Just an awesome guy, obviously a great football player, but, I love having these conversations with these recruits, just getting to know them, get to pick their brains a little bit. When I was talking to him, I just asked him, hey, who's SJ Alfaituli away from the field? And he's like, you know what? I just like to play music. He was talking about whenever he has headaches or CTE and all this stuff. I'm like, man, please don't have CTE. Please don't have it. But he likes to play the instruments, ukulele, drums, grew up playing instruments, as a kid. So make sure to check out that Inside the Lines with SJ Alfaituli. Like we know, he's a great football player, but also a great human being as well. And then we also have an update on the cousin of Nye Carr, who is a 2026 running back that the Miami Hurricanes really, really like, to Javian Lamar. Coach Merritt actually went up to Georgia to go check up on him. And Steven, you had to pick his brain a little bit after Coach Merritt checked up on him. What's he saying about the Hurricanes? What's the latest in that recruitment?
Miami's definitely a program that he's going to continue monitoring. He thinks pretty highly of Coach Merritt, and I'd expect both sides to maintain a certain level of interest. I do think it's possible that he gets down for a visit at some point, although when is still kind of up in the air, because as from what he told me, the Hurricanes kind of gave him an open-ended invite to get down to Coral Gables for a visit. He's got a lot of strong ties to Miami, between Nycar, going to the Hurricanes, and then his head coach Sean Calhoun actually has ties to Matt Merritt from some previous stuff. So there are a couple of connections there. I do think that it's possible that he'll get down at some point. I think when is kind of like the bigger question right now. Miami wanted to get him down for their junior day on January 18th. That's not going to be able to end up happening because he already has a visit locked in with Tennessee. He has that commitment there. But I would expect him at some point to get to Miami before he makes a decision.
And then wrap up the recruiting talk, I caught up with another Georgia four-star prospect, Deuce Gerald, who has been to Miami a pair of times in 2024. He had a lot of great things to say about the Hurricanes. And, one thing I thought was interesting, obviously, Miami Hurricanes do not have a defensive coordinator right now. But, hey, that is something that is not swaying him away from the Hurricanes. He has a lot of belief in Coach Cristobal. And, Steven, I kind of want to get your thoughts on this before we wrap up the show with, obviously recruiting is a central part. High school recruiting is a central part. Portal as well. Miami's landing quite a few guys without a defensive coordinator. Just what are your thoughts about, guys like Deuce Gerald saying, hey, it doesn't really matter who the DC is. I have faith in Coach Cristobal and, what he's building down there in Miami.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what it is what Gerald said. This is not about expressing how much faith you have in playing for a coordinator. This is about how much expressing how much faith you have in playing for a head coach. And really, that's what so much of recruiting is. I mean, yes, we do make a big deal out of position coaches and their ability to recruit, but at the end of the day, so many of these of these high school recruits, they are not committing. Well, any recruit, I shouldn't just say high school recruit. Any recruit, you are not necessarily committing to play for your position coach or the guy who recruited you, unless that's the head coach himself, because position coaches leave constantly, coordinators leave constantly. There is zero guarantee that your position coach or your coordinator will be there a year from now, whether they get fired or whether they get a better job opportunity. So anytime that you commit to a school, you are doing so with the understanding or with the expectation that you will hopefully be playing for this head coach. And then if that head coach gets fired, then that's an entirely other thing. That's a totally different scram. But I think that this is also, these kids saying that they have faith in Cristobal to hire someone good. They have faith in him to right the wrongs that we saw on defense last year, to get things corrected, to not allow 42 points to an Iowa State team that is not exactly known for offense. I really do think that this is kids saying that, yes, above all else, they do have faith in Cristobal. And as long as Cristobal is there, that's going to be the biggest selling point. Not who the DC is, not who the OC is, not who the receiver coach is, not who the running backs coach is. Yeah, it starts and ends at the top with Mario Cristobal. The only guy who I can really point to in college football recruiting that isn't an actual head coach, but I think is a position coach that really, really does hold that level of weight is Brian Hartline at Ohio State. Outside of him, I really can't point to any other position coach and say, yeah, I would commit, to play for him with the understanding that he's going to be there. And if my position coach leaves, I'm out. I really can't think of anyone else outside of Brian Hartline. So you are committing to play for a coach. I think that these kids know that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, just hearing that from prospects saying, hey, I believe in Coach Cristobal in year 3, winning 10 games. Obviously, defense wasn't where you wanted to be this year, but these guys have the utmost faith in him, like you said, to, bring in a coordinator that will right those wrongs. And there were a lot of wrongs last year, but hey, we're in 2025 now. But forget about all those defensive mishaps that happened. So make sure to check out all the stories that we have, whether it's recruiting or team news. Steven, our first Good Morning CaneSport of 2025. There will be many more. Thank you all for tuning in. For Steven Wagner, I'm Izubee Charles. Have a great rest of your day.